Good day. I am here to discuss about the operational provision under the CMO 22-2010, the Customs Memorandum Order. So let's begin. Operational provision. The first section in the operational provision is the section 13, entitled the Statutory Provisions on Entrance and Clearance. The provisions of Section 1001 to 1025 of the Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines, as amended on entrance and clearance of vessel, are deemed incorporated in this manual. The next section is the pre-arrival. First is the Notice of Arrival, or the NOA, Estimated Time of Arrival, or the ETA or ETA. The shipping agent or representative of any vessel engaged in foreign trade entering any of the Philippine ports of entry shall notify the Piers and Inspection Division, Base Service Section or its equivalent office of the vessel's arrival and all other particulars at least 24 hours in advance. So 24 hours, mag-advance sila og 24 hours before the vessel's arrival sa base service section or its equivalent office. The next is, upon receipt of the notice of arrival, the Customs Inspector or E2M OIC of the Piers and Inspection Division, Base Service Section or its equivalent office shall perform the following functions. The first function is electronically verify the vessel registry number or principal and other vessel information through Client Profile Registration Systems or the CPRS. The next function is input the estimated time of arrival or what we call the ETA in E2M Customs System. The third function is encode the time and date in the system and affix his signature on the hard copy of the notice of arrival. The next function is furnish the customs boarding team a copy of the processed notice of arrival. There is also an assignment of customs boarding team. The customs boarding team shall be assigned by the chief or base service section through a duly assigned assignment order. The Inward Foreign Manifest or IFM and Consolidated Cargo Manifest or the CCM contents. The hard copy of the Inward Foreign Manifest required to be submitted by the master of the vessel to the boarding officer shall contain the following information. The first information is the bill of lading number. The second information is marks and numbers of cartons, drums, boxes, crates, and other forms of protective packaging for break bulk. The third information is container and seal number if containerized and initials FCL if full container load and LCL if less container load. Next is number of packages, kind of packages, contents of description of cargo, shipper, consignee, gross weight in metric tons, measurement in cubic meters, port of origin, notify party. So that is the Inward Foreign Cargo Manifest submitted not in accordance with the above requirements shall be rejected. So ma-reject ang imuhang Inward Foreign Cargo Manifest if wala na nimo gi-follow ang mga information given sa boarding officer. There is also late submission. If kanang malate og submit ang imong permit kay na say offense. The first offense is 10,000 pesos. The second offense is 20,000 pesos. The third offense is 30,000 pesos. The non-compliant submission 30,000 lahos if non-compliant sa pag-submit. So section 15, the arrival. Documents, permits, or quarantine certificate for incoming vessels from a foreign port Entry of vessels from any port or place outside of the Philippines shall not be permitted until they have obtained a quarantine certificate issued under the authority of the Bureau of Quarantine. So, ang entry of vessels from any port kay dili na siya permitted kung wala sila ipakita nga quarantine certificate nga gi-issue gikan sa Bureau of Quarantine. The next is entrance of vessel from a foreign port. Upon arrival of a vessel from a foreign port, BOC OPM Form Number 9 or Oath of Entering Vessel from a Foreign Port with Customs Documentary Stamp duly accomplished by the Master in 4. The following customs personnel shall be the members of Customs Boarding Team. The first is the Customs Senior Boarding Officer. Under him is the Customs Inspectors and the Customs Guards. The next is submission of advanced electronic manifest before arrival of vessels engaged in foreign trade through E2M, customs system, and penalties. The submission of electronic copy of inward foreign manifest and electronic copy of consolidated cargo manifest must be done through any of the value-added service providers accredited by the BOC. The cut-off time for e-manifest submission is calculated from the submitted estimated date and time of arrival. So, kuan na siya kanang gi-calculate na nadaan sa mga kuan sa ang pag-submit nimo sa mga sa imong time for e-manifest sa kuan sa estimated gikan sa imong pag-estimate sa time ug sa time of arrival using the BOC Gateway Service Clock. So, muna yung gagamit ang Gateway Service Clock. Next is the registration of e-manifest. The system automatically registers a manifest in the E2M customs system if the manifest meets the submission deadline. Copies shall be presented to the Office of the Customs Clearance Officer within 24 hours. So, kailangan ang mga copies imo ginang i-present sa office sa Customs Clearance Officer within 24 hours. Next is documents to be produced by master upon entry of vessel. The following documents properly accomplished shall be submitted by the master to the Customs Senior Boarding Officer. First is the quarantine certificate or the pratik. The second is clearance of vessel from last port of call. The third is the original and 4 copies of inward foreign manifest duly signed by the master. The next one is 3 copies of each of the following: the crew list, the passengers list for aliens by. Next is the copy of original duplicate of bills of lading, bonded stores list, narcotics and dangerous drugs list, ship store list, mail list, firearms and ammunition list, cruise declaration list, or parcel list. Shipping articles and register of the vessel of Philippine registry is true cargo manifests, if any, which shall be deposited to the customs inspector and shall be returned to the master prior to departure to other ports. Cargo stowage plan or hatch list. If passengers vessel, 3 copies of disembarking passengers list under baggage declaration. The inward foreign manifest shall be distributed to the following offices: the original copy of Pierce and Inspection Division or equivalent office, 1 copy of Commission on Audit, Resident Auditor through the Office of the Commissioner, 1 copy of the Intelligence Group, 1 copy of the Assessment and Operations Monitoring Group. Next is endorsement of permits. The following permits shall be endorsed on the reverse side thereof: the general permit, the ship side permit, permits for the sending of special consignments of cargo to the piers or the parcel section, permits issued by the Deputy Collector for operations or its equivalent office for the transfer of cargo from one vessel to another. On the same permit and directly under the preceding endorsement, the receiving customs inspector shall make an endorsement to the effect that he received the cargoes on board the vessel to which he is assigned. Next is the shipside permits. Shipside permit, when duly processed and approved by the Collector of Customs or Deputy Collector for Operations or its equivalent office, as the case may be, is an authority for the customs inspector assigned on a vessel to allow the discharge of cargoes specified on the permit at shipside and to lighters underguarded. There are three kinds of shipside permits. The first is the regular shipside permit. The regular shipside permit is issued by the Deputy Collector for Operation or its equivalent office as new presently required for all cargoes which belong to the categories or of regular shipside cargoes under existing regulations. The next is the special shipside permit. When cargoes do not belong to regular shipside cargoes, such as ballast, garbage, provisions, water, bunkering, vessel, parts for repair, the ship's agent has to get the authority from the Collector of Customs prior to the processing and approval by the Deputy Collector for Operations or its equivalent office. The third is the temporary shipside permit. Temporary shipside permit is a written authority to discharge cargoes. So, written authority to discharge cargoes at shipside and to lighter as per order of the Collector of Customs. This permit also issued on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays when there are no offices to process the regular shipside permit. Several conditions are usually imposed in the issuance of this temporary permit, among which are that the cargo is underguarded continuously until released by the Bureau of Customs, that the Deputy Collector for Operations or Chiefs, Piers, and Inspection Division or its equivalent office be duly notified of the discharge under the temporary permit. The pending issuance of shipside permits. So, pending issuance of shipside delivery permit is the customs inspector on board may receive written requests from the consignees, countersigned by the ship's agents and approved by the Collector of Customs, that certain designated goods be discharged into separate carriers. The next is the transfer note, or what we call also the both note. It shall be made in sextuplicate by the customs inspector on board. For cargoes delivered at shipside, the transfer note shall show the following: the name of vessel and registry number, the name of lighter, name of broker or consignee, shipside permit number, marks and numbers, kinds and descriptions of goods, time and date lighter left alongside the vessel, names and signatures of customs inspector, customs guard in charge of lighter, and the patron of the lighter. Next is any other information and or remarks such as conditions set forth on the shipside permit by the Collector of Customs. The copies of the prepared transfer note shall be distributed as follows: the original and the duplicate to the customs guard in charge. The triplicate, tulo na siya. From the word triplicate, is attached to the shipside permit together with the guard's check report. The next is the quadruplicate. Quadruplicate from the word quadro, four. To patron of the lighter. Quintuplicate, the inspector's file, and the sextuplicate is attached to the booklet of the transfer note issuing officer. The boarding sequence is the vessel upon arrival from a foreign port at the port of entry and after issuance of the quarantine certificate by the Bureau of Quarantine shall be boarded in the following order: Customs Senior Boarding Officer, Customs Inspector, and Customs Guards assigned to the vessel. The next is the Immigration Officer. The third is Department of Agriculture. The next is the other agencies or persons authorized by the Collector of Customs. C is Customs Boarding Team on Foreign Vessel. The Customs Senior Boarding Officer shall place the vessel under customs control and surveillance by posting a customs inspector and customs guards thereon. No tugboat, rowboat, or other watercrafts shall be allowed to go alongside the vessel to ferry any person to or from the vessel without a permit from the collector of customs. So, di na siya prohibited nga na mga ferry, na mga tugboat, rowboat, kung wala sila permit nga gikan sa collector of customs. Unauthorized tugboats, rowboats, and other watercrafts shall keep away from such vessel engaged in foreign trade at a distance of not less than 50 meters. So, kailangan layo gikan na sila sa ang mga tugboats o rowboats. Kung unauthorized sila, wala sila labot sa pag-trade, foreign trade sa mga vessels engaged in foreign trade. Next is the actual time of arrival, or the ETA, of foreign vessel through E2M customs system. After boarding formalities, the E2M OIC Piers and Inspection Division Base Service Section shall input the actual time of arrival from the boarding information sheet submitted by the customs boarding officer. From the word actual time of arrival, mag-abot niya, kailangan butang niya ang actual time. Next is submission of supplemental cargo manifest. Supplemental e-manifest submission is treated as non-compliant late submission and shall be subject to penalty as stated in Part 2, Section 14C of this manual. Submission of supplemental e-manifest. Cargoes or containers not listed in the IFM but are otherwise recorded in the stowage plan must be covered by a supplemental e-manifest submitted to the BOC through the VASP not later than 48 hours from date of discharge of the last package from the vessel. So 48, not later than 48 hours gina siya ang pag-record sa stowage plan must be covered by a supplemental e-manifest. Next is in both cases the deputy collector for operations in the chief, piers and inspection division or its equivalent office monitor the 48 or 24 hours rules as the case may be, authorizing the registration of the supplemental e-manifest into the electronic manifest system. Unloading of cargoes. First is containerized. Discharging of containerized cargoes shall be authorized only upon issuance of a general permit by the customs senior boarding officer. Thereafter, unloading of containers shall commence. Customs inspectors, customs guards shall check or inspect if container seals are intact. Next is the break and break bulk. The clearance of cargoes for bulk and break bulk cargoes, such as liquids, chemicals, petroleum products, and all other cargoes shipped in bulk or break bulk, the duties and taxes of which are normally determined by weight shall be governed by the pertinent regulations, more particularly CAO 3-2010 and CMO 18-2010 on procedure for the bulk and break bulk cargo clearance enhancement program mandated under Administrative Order Number 243 as amended by Administrative Order 243A. Unloading of bulk and break bulk cargoes at shipside. Shipside discharge of cargo shall be authorized only upon presentation of necessary shipside permit issued by the Deputy Collector for Operations. Upon receipt of the shipside permit, the customs inspector assigned on board shall verify the subject shipment covered by the shipside permit against the inward foreign manifest as to the correctness of marks and numbers, quantity, kind of merchandise, weight, etc. Assign a customs guard to check the shipside permit so that only those authorized to be discharged are unloaded. Kaya na may usahay nga, bisag dili sila authorized, na mag-discharge o nasa mag-unload, mo na kinahanglan gid nga, naging ma-assign nga customs guard to check the shipside permit. Assign a regular customs guard to underguard the lighter with the cargoes if the permit so stipulates. Duties of customs inspectors relative to import cargo. Unless the collector of customs permits their discharge, into lighter or carriers to subserve public interest. All vessels arriving from foreign port shall discharge their import cargo at official designated piers. So kailangan gid nimo ikuan ka nang i-discharge gid ang imong mga cargo sa designated ra ni mga piers, kay ang imong permit na aram gid nga ara gid siya nakabutang ang nasa imong permit ara gid nga pier nakabutang ba. So you should always discharge the import cargo on the designated piers only. The customs inspector on board the vessel shall permit shipside delivery upon receipt of the shipside delivery permit, provided transportation facilities for the cargo described therein are available. All import cargoes discharged at shipside shall be checked by customs guards, detailed for the purpose by the customs inspectors on board, and for each carrier, the said customs inspectors shall accomplish a transfer note showing the quantity and description of the cargo in each lighter or carrier. The delivery of cargo at shipside is the most important duty of a customs inspector. He shall take every precaution to avoid mistakes. He shall read every permit carefully to ascertain the kind and quantity of the cargo that he has authority to deliver. He shall see to it that the marks and numbers of the goods being discharged at shipside conform to all particulars as reflected in the inward foreign manifest. So, double check gid mo na yung trabaho sa customs inspector nga. Always double check ang mga cargoes, if the quantity is correct, the labels, mga papers, mga requirements, sakto ba? Kailangan always double check. The customs inspectors on board may also receive written permits from the collector of customs or deputy collector for operations to send cargo for transfer to bonded warehouses, in which case he shall cause the goods to be checked by marks and numbers. Parcel listed articles shall be properly accomplished on BC form number 174. Accompanying transfer notes shall be accomplished giving the marks and numbers and the names of the consignee. So, kung unsay mga nakabutang, kung kinsang nasa sud, imo ginang i-note para ma-note nimo ang mga capacity, ang mga tao pila ka buok, kay ang statement rin nga shall be accomplished. So kuan ginakanang giving the marks and the numbers and the names of the consignee. Sa logbook mo na gina sa logbook mo na importante kay ang pag logbook sa imong ngalan if you are on a vessel. Importation of arms and ammunitions shall be discharged immediately from vessel with proper transfer note to be sent to and received at the Customs Police Division for safekeeping and for proper disposition. Goods remaining on board any vessel after the expiration of the period for discharge and not reported for transit or transshipment to another port may be unladen by the customs authorities and stored at the vessel's expense. The next is the instruction of customs inspectors relative to carriers receiving import cargo. First is no cargo shall be discharged at shipside into open carriers, except those authorized or for delivery thereat under existing customs rules and regulations. So, state rin, no cargo shall be discharged. Wala dyan laing cargo nga i-discharge sa shipside into open carriers. Naaray uban if they are authorized. They are authorized only for delivery. Next is carriers alongside a vessel having cargo that is under customs supervision shall not be permitted to shift to another vessel to receive cargo unless authorized by the collector of customs or deputy collector for operations of the port. Next is empty carriers shall not be permitted to lie at night alongside a government pier or a vessel moored thereto or a vessel anchored in the harbor, or be attached to party-loaded carriers which may be alongside or fastened to such pier or vessel with import or export cargo. No to carriers brought alongside to receive import cargo or discharge export cargo while the cargo on the pier or vessel is being worked at night. All merchandise and other movable articles on board a vessel not included in the cargo manifest or ship stores shall be included in the list of ship stores. The customs inspector shall, as soon as practicable after a vessel has been placed in discharge, verify by personal inspection the seal of the ship stores which may be broken. Ship stores may be discharged under the same conditions as the other cargo, but the written permission of the quarantine officer shall be presented to the customs inspectors before the discharge is permitted. Next is unloading of cargoes at dockside. First is the import cargoes. All cargoes discharged at dockside from a vessel not be accounted for by the customs inspector. However, a customs guard on each working hatch must see to it that the ship's checker is on board, making a tally of each sling goes down. Without a tally, the customs guard must stop the discharge from that hatch until such time that the checker does his job correctly. So as a checker, always do your job kanang honestly na pagtali nimo kuan gid ka mo check jud ka kay from the word checker, checking is your duty. Passengers' baggage, parcel list, and cruise personnel effects. The customs inspector shall cause the immediate discharge of all baggage, parcel cargoes, and articles brought in by the ship's crews and passengers for discharge at the pier. If baggage and parcels are to be discharged into a carrier in the steam, the customs inspector shall assign a customs guard to underguard such baggage and parcels to the office of the Bay Service Section or the PID, where the receiving customs personnel in charge thereat will sign. For purpose of determining whether in cargo or entrusted shipments of merchandise or articles from abroad be included in the parcel list, hereunder is the criteria. Any cargo which is found to exceed 350 lbs or 159 kilos in weight and 40 cu feet in measurement shall not be included in parcel list, and as such the customs inspector shall not allow the discharge unless the shipping agent concerned shall file a supplement cargo manifest for said parcel or cargo with 24 hours after the arrival of the carrying vessel and pay the corresponding duties and taxes with either the informal entry division or formal entry division depending on the weight and measurement of the said cargo. The time and date of discharge to the Bay Service Section of each parcel cargo shall be duly noted by the customs inspector on board under the last column of his copy of the parcel list. Under no circumstances shall any parcel cargo destined for other ports of entry be authorized for discharge at the pier without proper authority from the collector of customs. So let's go to the next section. The section 16 is the departure. First is the document or permits. The documents required for exportation, in general, export declaration, commercial invoice, packing list, export permit. And the next is the additional documents required is the CBW shipments or the transfer note, certificate of identification, and certificate of inspection and loading. The PEZA shipments, the PEZA transfer note, and PEZA tally sheet. The provincial loading, the transit cargo manifest. The constructive warehousing and immediate exportation is the previous import entry, an internal revenue declaration, re-exportation bond, and transshipment permit. The special permit to load containers intended for loading, the letter request from the shipping lines, and list of containers intended for loading. Second is the inspector's certificate of lading. The inspector's certificate of lading is accomplished by the customs inspectors on board of carrying vessel for all conventional export cargoes loaded into vessels. The third is the customs clearance of foreign vessel. For purposes of clearance of a vessel, The following documents shall be presented to the PID clearance section prior to the issuance of clearance. First is the BOC OPM Form number 12. Inside it is the Outward Foreign Manifest with the 4 copies, 1 original copy, and 3 photocopies. Next is the BOC OPM Form number 10, or the Oath of Master in Manifest in clearance for a foreign port, with the 4 copies again, with 1 original copy, with customs documentary stamp, and 3 photocopies. Next is the BOC OPM Form number 11 entitled Oath of Master of Foreign Vessel Clearing Without Passengers, 4 copies, with 1 original copy and 3 photocopies. Next is the BOC OPM Form number 2, the clearance of vessel to a foreign port, with 2 only copies, the 1 original copy, and second is the original copy with master of the vessel's copy with original seal and signature of the collector of customs or his duly authorized representative. Next is the BOC Form number 3, the clearance of customs inspector assigned on board in 3 copies. First is the copy of clearance officer, second is the copy for the shipping agent, the third is the copy for the customs inspector on board. Next is the BC Form number 88, the statistics supplemental in 4 copies. The Bureau of Quarantine clearance for outgoing vessels, the plant quarantine clearance, the post office clearance, the request for customs clearance by shipping agencies signed by the customs inspectors concurring that the vessel in which he is assigned is ready to sail for foreign port, the register and shipping articles if the vessel is of Philippine registry, the consular certificate of entry if the vessel is of foreign registry when required. Next is stuffing and loading of cargoes. First is the containerized. Instructions relative to stuffing of containerized export cargoes is upon the issuance of the authority to load, the export declaration permits duly processed at the export division shall be forwarded to the customs container control division by exporters, shippers, or customs representatives. The assigned stuffing inspectors shall not allow stuffing of export cargoes into the container van unless the duly processed export declarations permits of the cargoes to be stuffed shall have been presented with the authority to load stamp thereon. Next is the assigned stuffing inspector shall supervise the actual stuffing which shall be conducted in the presence of the representatives from all parties concerned. Duties and representative of stuffing inspector. First is the stuffing inspector shall supervise the actual stuffing at the place where it shall be conducted. He shall see to it that only those export cargoes with duly processed export declarations, permits, with authority to load shall be allowed to be stuffed into the container van. He shall ascertain that the accompanying supporting documents, attachments to export, declarations, permits are complete and correspond to what has been declared. Upon completion to the stuffing, he shall ascertain that the doors of the container vans are closed or locked and properly sealed. As to warehousing export shipments, he shall certify and sign the certificate of inspection and loading, and shall perform such other duties that may be assigned to him from time to time by his superiors. Inspector Certificate of Lading Report of the Stuffing Inspector. The stuffing inspectors shall accomplish the inspector's certificate of lading, specifying the number of containers and description of goods appearing on each of the export declaration, permit noting in the remarks column the van number opposite the cargoes contained in one export declaration or permit. The stuffing of containers in customs banded warehouses. When export cargoes are to be stuffed in containers at shipper's customs banded warehouse, the stuffing shall be supervised by the warehouse man. Loading of bulk and breakbulk export cargoes at shipside. All cargoes at shipside shall have appropriate permits for such loading. Loading of bulk cargoes of ships at shipside shall be subject to weighing. Loading of containers, whether loaded or empty, at shipside from lighters should not be allowed because of the difficulty of checking the numbers and contents of loaded containers should verification be required. All containers, whether loaded or not, should be loaded from the pier. The instructions relative to loading and containerized export cargoes. The loading inspector shall not allow the loading of containerized export cargoes into his assigned vessel without the corresponding duly processed export declarations, permits, with the authority to load stamp thereon. The loading inspector shall allow the loading only upon presentation of an authority to load by the following: Export Division for regular exports, special permits to load, CBW export shipments and PESA shipments, Export Coordination Division for export declaration processed by the ECD for provincial loading, Office of the Deputy Collector for operations for constructive warehousing and immediate exportation and foreign transshipment permits, and CCCD for SPL empty containers. The loading inspectors shall make sure that the containers to be loaded are indeed intended to his assigned vessel and for that particular voyage of the vessel. Duties and responsibilities of the loading inspector. The loading inspector shall inspect and see to it that all containerized export cargoes are covered by duly processed export declarations permits prior to loading. He shall sign and submit the sequence of loading prepared by the shipping agent to the inspectors on board carrying vessel. He shall perform such other duties that may be assigned to him from time to time by his superiors. Inspector's certificate of lading, report of loading inspector, duty requirements and overtime working conditions. Next is the book and break book. Loading of export cargoes at dockside. Export permits covering export loading shall be presented to the customs inspector prior to actual loading. The customs guard shall make a tally the actual packages, containers being loaded, checking the number of the packages, marks, and numbers against the export entry presented. The customs inspector board the vessel shall permit the lading of export cargo only upon presentation of an authority to load issued by the following: Office of the Deputy Collector for operations for constructive warehousing and immediate exportation and foreign transshipment permits. For all exportation loaded at shipside, the exporter will send to the customs inspector on board of the vessel through the patron of the carrier a note or conduce which will show name of the vessel, name and the license number, name of bags, name of exporter, name of the export declaration. When export cargo weighed on shore under customs supervision is exported, no quantity in excess of the weight declared shall be received on board. Loading of passengers' baggage, crew, personal effects. Outgoing passengers taking valuables or jewelry abroad shall be advised to secure certificates of identification from the export division, and it shall be the duty of the customs inspector on board the vessel to verify that such articles are actually taken on board by attesting on the certificate of identification that such jewelries are actually brought by the passengers on board. The next section is the customs transit. Customs transit means the customs procedure under which goods are transported under customs control from one customs office to another. There are four kinds of customs transit operation. First is from port of entry as exit point for outright exportation, from port of entry to another port of entry, inland customs office, from an inland customs office to port of entry as exit point for outright exportation, from one port of entry, inland customs office to another port of entry, inland customs office. Next is the transshipment, is under the section 18. Customs procedure under which goods are transferred under customs control from the importing means of transport to the exporting means of transport within the area of one customs office, which is the office of both importation and exportation. Special instructions to customs inspector relative to the discharge of transshipped cargo. Goods from a foreign port may be transshipped direct from the carrying vessel to another vessel engaged in the coastwise or foreign trade upon receipt of written permission from the collector of customs. When a foreign transshipment permit authorizing the transfer of cargo from a foreign port is received by the customs inspector on board of foreign vessel, he shall permit the discharge of the consignment, causing it to be checked by marks and numbers. Bulk and breakbulk cargoes for foreign transshipment shall either be discharged directly into the receiving vessel if it comes alongside, or otherwise transshipped to it in lighters or discharged at the pier for eventual loading to the receiving vessel. Containerized cargoes for foreign transshipment shall be discharged at the pier for eventual loading to the receiving vessel under the same conditions stated in Section 15-A, item number 2 above. The instructions relative to foreign transshipment by CCCD, after having been duly processed at the Deputy Collector for Operations, the foreign transshipment permit in case of containerized cargoes with its supporting documents shall be coursed through the Customs Container Control Division for posting of container numbers under eventual loading. The loading inspector assigned to carrying vessel shall verify the correctness of the container numbers indicated in the permit prior to loading of transit. The last section is Section 19, the transfer of imported cargo to outside CYSCFS by CCCD. After having been duly processed at the Office of the Deputy Collector for Operations, the permit to transfer to outside shall be coursed through the Customs Container Control Division for posting of container numbers under eventual transfer. The permit to transfer to outside shall then be transmitted to the Office of the Chief, PID, or its equivalent office. That's all for today's discussion about the CMO, or the Customs Memorandum Order -22 to 2010. Thank you, and God bless us all.